Welcome, everybody, to Inside Boxing Daily on the Gruely True Sports Network. The Inside Boxing Daily show is brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation. Go check out Jackie Richardson and Alex Ramos on Facebook. I am your host for the Inside Boxing Daily show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, the lovely Jeremiah Pricer.
Thank you. That it's a nice introduction. I appreciate that. Let's get this thing going, man. I'm excited.
Well, I watched a 60 Minutes interview with Pat Sajak and Vanna White, so that's what inspired me to do that.
Yeah, I'll take it any day.
Our guest tonight is lovely also. He is, for my money, the best ring announcer in boxing. Help welcome Thomas Treiber to the show. How you doing, Thomas?
Well, I appreciate those kind words, and the check will be in the mail. And just happy to be here and be back on the show.
I say the same thing to Jimmy Lennon and Michael Buffer when they're on those. So don't.
I know you do. I know you do.
You are my favorite. You can ask Jeremiah; he'll tell you.
Well, I appreciate that. I do.
All right, that's because the other two won't come on too. But still, you're still my favorite.
I'm cheap. I'm cheaper than they are. I'll do it.
Well, Jimmy Lennon said he would. I just haven't called him yet. I got his phone number, but I figure, hell, I got Thomas Treiber. What do I need Jimmy Lennon for? All right, we had you on. Why don't you tell us what your life has entailed the last few months? We haven't had you on in at least 5 or 6 months, I think. Just tell us a little bit about where you've been and any interesting things that may have happened to you along the way.
Well, I finished off the year of 2019 in London. I did a Daniel Dubois fight to finish the end of the year. And of course, that's a big fight coming up in April with him again against Joyce. But that's how I finished my year. And then I've had a really nice start to the year. I've been working a lot of events for the Showtime Network series Showbox, The New Generation. In a couple of weeks, I'll be in Hinckley, Minnesota with my next Showbox event. And this weekend, I've got one local gig, I guess you could say, since I live in San Antonio. I'll be in Laredo on Friday night and then Albuquerque, New Mexico on Saturday. And just looking forward to staying busy, hopefully this year, and continue to do what I enjoy to do. And, glad to be back on the show and talking current boxing stuff.
Yeah, and current boxing. My favorite topic on every show is where we spend time talking about Tyson Fury and how he beat down Deontay Wilder. And you were a guy who saw Tyson Fury from the get-go.
I did. I had the honor of ring announcing his professional boxing debut. That was in December of 2008 in Nottingham, England at the Trent FM Arena. The main event that night was actually Carl Froch, who fought Jean Pascal. And it was Carl Froch's first world title win. And if you have not seen that fight, I would encourage anyone to Google that fight on YouTube and watch it. It was a great, great fight. But that was Tyson Fury's pro debut. I really didn't know anything about him until that weekend. I knew he had a pretty good amateur career, and I was just taken back by his size. And I really, that night he won rather quickly, so I didn't get to see too much of him, but I knew right there that he had some good athleticism for a 6'9" guy. The way he moved around the ring, he was already putting together nice combinations and using his jab. And I said, man, this guy, if he continues to get better and better, he could be a real threat just with his size and athletic ability for a big man. And needless to say, he has done that and then some, and I couldn't be happier for Tyson Fury. I know him quite well as well from, times we've hung out outside the ring, and couldn't be happier for him.
Yeah. Well, and you talked about the Froch Pascal fight. It's pretty incredible because not only was that a damn good scrap, but it's surprising that Pascal himself is still ticking. It's like Froch hung up the gloves, like half a decade ago, and Pascal is still ticking, even after a war like that, which is insane. But even at that time when you were, calling his first bout, did you really Did you think that Fury would reach these kind of heights? I mean, it's impossible to tell really that the path will be this winding. But did you ever think he would beat a guy like Klitschko, and then now he's at the top of the division?
No, I mean, you knew he had some natural ability. He had the size, but gosh, I really never thought he would have the impact he's had not only on the sport, but people around the world, as someone now who has been open about dealing with his own issues of mental illness. He's really inspired people who have hit rock bottom and come back and been able to be successful again in his career. So he's been a real inspiration to people around the world who may be battling mental illness. But I never thought that he would, be that dominant as a heavyweight. And, even when I did Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s second professional fight, of course, he came out of the Olympics. There was a lot of high hopes for him. But even when a guy has a great amateur career, that doesn't always mean they're going to be a great professional fighter. So it's always a little unquestionable at that time early in their career as a professional. But, man, has Tyson Fury proved a lot of people wrong, because a lot of people thought that he was just, overrated and just all hype. And just because he was tall was the only reason people were interested in him. And boy, has he proved people wrong.
Now, I know you did a lot of his fights early on. Did you do the first John McDermott fight?
I don't think I did. I can't recall. I don't think so. Yeah. No, I think I did. And I know that was
because that was actually considered a close fight by a lot of people.
I'll tell you what, now that you're mentioning that, I do recall that fight. I did not do it. And some people thought that Tyson got, a lucky decision that night. That could have easily been a loss for him. But he did get the win. And that's one of those tricky situations there in the UK where they still have the referee as both the ref and the judge. They don't use the three judges for those non-title fights. So I think that was a particular evening where the referee was also the judge.
Well, I'll ask you both this. Now, I think pretty much dang near all the British fights were back in like the 50s and 60s. Do you think that that's a good idea to have the referee being the sole judge? Or do you like the three blind mice?
Yes, very, very well put there. Very well put. I think I prefer the three judges. I mean, the more people judging the fight, I think the better chance you have of a fair decision. I think it's certainly a lot to ask for a referee, not only to be focusing on his duties as a referee, but then have to also, jot down a score after each round. I think that's a lot to ask. And I will say, though, that these referees in the UK do an outstanding job. I mean, I'm always very impressed by how accurate they are by refereeing and judging the fights. So, but with that said, I would prefer three judges. How about you, Jeremiah?
Yeah, I can't disagree there. I mean, I would pretty much agree with every word he just said. I just think it's more, I don't know, maybe you aren't over. I don't know. I don't have any personal experience, so I don't know what it's like to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's just a lot going on, and you overburden a guy, and it's just not necessary. Again, I don't know how it's turned out. It'd be interesting if somebody did a case study on that, to see, over the years how well the British, referee / judges, right, the lone ref / judge got it right. That would be interesting to see. Like does he fall in line with what most people saw or what? But yeah, I mean, I think, three referees is good enough. I think if you wanted to make changes to the game, you probably stick with three refs, and then you change it some other place, like add more rounds, or, I know the World Boxing Super Series had, I think for the finals, or maybe it was throughout the whole thing, they had a fourth judge to acting as a tiebreaker. There's some interesting things that can be done, but I just think you want more people involved than just a lone arbiter of justice. I don't know. That's a hard thing to come to terms with in boxing.
How about this?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you both this again because I remember, Thomas, you're close to my age, which means you're old. And when we grew up, like in the 80s, if you remember, I think it was the late 80s, they actually had open scoring in some states. Do you like the idea of open scoring so everybody knows where they stand? Or as a ring announcer, do you like the drama better?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that because I think it really takes away from the excitement of a close fight and waiting for the suspenseful decision. And certainly as a ring announcer, that's a big thrill of mine to be able to relay the scores and who the winner is after a really close fight. So personally, I think it's, better to not reveal the scores throughout a fight. As a fight fan, I would prefer kind of wondering and having that suspenseful moment.
Well, see, I do too, but the way I'm going to ask this to Jeremiah is different. If you have open scoring, does it make it less likely that you're going to get an Adelaide Bird who scores, the Canelo Triple G first fight the way she did?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it matters because even if you have a judge who has a horrible scorecard, there's just rarely any justice in because Canelo Alvarez actually had, if I'm not mistaken, but I think he had open scoring against Austin Trout, and a lot of people Trout was down by like 3 points or something. Going into the championship rounds, I believe it was. Again, it's kind of fuzzy now, but I remember watching the fight and hearing that and just kind of being deflated because I knew some of the drama was going to be taken away, right? It's not like you're going to go back to your corner and he's going to be like, all right, well, it's a close one. You got to win these rounds. If you're in Canelo's corner, you're just like, all right, well, just play it safe and get it. I don't know. I've seen some fights with open scoring, and I'm trying to remember if there was an example where we had an outlandish scorecard like Adelaide Bird's in Golovkin Alvarez won. I can't recall, but yeah, I just think it takes the drama away. I mean, and if you really want to, if you really want to have justice in these sort of things and monitor them and make sure they're in line and they're doing it correctly, again, I just think there are better steps you can take. I mean, I just don't think that's one of them. In an effort to bring justice to the scoring system, you're also taking drama away. And I'd rather have the drama and then make sure the refs are good before the fight.
And I think, how old are you, Thomas?
I'm 46.
All right. Do you remember, you probably don't remember Ali Shavers then, right?
No. I mean,
because I think Ali Shavers had open scoring. And that was a fight that was affected by it. But Ali still stood and fought in the 15th round. But I remember occasionally that would happen. I can't remember if that was true in that one, and I think that maybe had something to do with the Ali Norton 3 scores. But I agree with you guys. I like the suspense, and, I mean, let's face it, if something's not on a level, it'll be taken care of one way or the other.
And that's what makes boxing different than other sports where, in other sports, who's winning based on what the current score of, the game is at that time. And where boxing, there's always that element of wondering. And, you've always got the unofficial scoring like we've had with Harold Letterman throughout the year, like we had with Harold, God rest his soul. He was a great guy and a great friend of mine. And now we have Steve Farhood, who does a tremendous job with Showtime as the unofficial judge. So we always have like a bit of a baseline of what we can expect the score to be. But I think you really rob the boxing fans of, your traditional fans of wondering and having that suspenseful moment when the decision is finally read.
All right, Jeremiah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I think it was the WBC also that had that rule that if you clashed heads with somebody, the person who wasn't cut got a point deduction. Do you remember that one as well?
How long ago was that?
It was man. I swear I remember watching one of the fights. I think it was around the 80s as well. I don't know if this was a time when, again, this is kind of before my time, but I don't know if this was a time they were trying to make some reform and do it because I think that was the same era that they reduced it from 15 to 12. I'm not exactly sure when the open scoring system happened, but if it was Ollie Shavers or Ollie Norton 3, I mean, that's the late 70s. So I don't know. Maybe there was a period there where they were trying to do a lot of reform. But yeah, they had a rule for a little while that if two guys head clashed, the person who was not cut got a point deduction from them. Anyways, we'll just move from other things, and let's just go back to Fury. And you said you've hung out with Fury outside of
Yes, I have.
the ring. I mean, what is he like as a person? I mean, I know it's always hard to say because you hear word of mouth from other people, and you're like, oh, well, you don't really know, and it's kind of hard to tell if you don't hang out with them yourself. And even sometimes I've had feedback on fighters, and it just varies, and it can happen. It's like going to a restaurant, and sometimes you get a good cook and you get good food. You go the next time, and it's crap food because you got a chef who doesn't care or something. How is Fury in outside of the ring?
Yeah, I mean, he's a very nice guy. He's very intelligent in the conversations I've had with him. He's got that. He's a colorful guy outside the ring as well, but obviously when there's the press conferences and he's in front of the camera, he turns it up a notch. But he's a very funny guy, very engaging, very friendly. He calls me Tommy T. So he's got a great personality. Like I said, I honestly can't say a bad thing about him. I always enjoyed the times that we'd be sitting in the lobbies of the hotels with him and his family, his father John, his brothers and cousins. There's always a big group of the Fury family there at all the fights, and they've all been really great to me, and always enjoy crossing paths with them.
All right, now, I noticed this, but am I wrong here? If you're hanging out with Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, and John Fury, the last dude you want to piss off is probably John Fury, right?
He's the most imposing, scary guy of that.
Oh, I got that
there.
just for watching that one interview show they did where they've got David Hay with him, and I'm thinking, man, I bet he could jump up and just beat the living snot out of David Hay.
Well, John was a fighter himself back in the day. He didn't have the success that his son Tyson has had, but John's a big guy. Yeah, but he did gouge a
dude's eye out, so you got that too. That don't happen. I'm just talking about getting in a fight in the street. I think that's the last dude I want to mess with.
Man, you are not kidding. Yeah, that's some scary stuff there.
Yeah, because I need both my eyes because I can barely see out of both of them as I get older. With just one, I'm really going to be screwed.
Well, you got the feeling. I was going to say real quick. You got the feeling watching John Fury do the interview that if the interviewer asked the wrong question or said the wrong thing, he might be missing both of his eyeballs.
Yeah. I bet Tyson still listens to him too.
Oh man. I'll tell you what, though, John is Tyson's biggest fan, though. I mean, you'll never see a bigger supporter than John of his son Tyson, and he's been like that since day one. And I love his passion. I think, anytime I see John on interview shows and things like that, I find him very entertaining, and you could just see the confidence and passion he has for his son, and rightfully so.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people talk about how boxers need to grow up poor and destitute, and he was probably poor. I mean, there were gypsies and stuff. But to have your dad in your corner like that and to not be an overbearing ass the way so many fathers can be that train or coach or deal with their sons is really impressive.
Absolutely.
And then we talk about, you didn't hang out with him in 2016 and 17, did you?
No,
just
not
checking.
During that time period. Yeah. But I did do his return
He's like,
fight.
plead the fifth.
Yeah, I plead the fifth. Nope, I didn't. No, but, I was really saddened for him at that time because, I knew the potential he had. And, when you see a guy accomplish what he did by becoming the lineal heavyweight champion of the world and beating Klitschko, and then to fall that far down, I was really saddened for him. And, he's a man who has a wife and kids, and I never want to see that to happen to anybody, and I could not have been more happy to do his return fight. We did it in Manchester, England, and the crowd, he had that very if you ever seen the ring entrance from that one, but great ring entrance, and Tyson Fury was back. And, I knew at that time if he was able to continue to keep his head straight and continue to get in better condition, the sky was the limit. And he did it. He's done it. And we will see what happens next. I think there's a rematch.
And
third.
The thing that was so impressive to me about that comeback was we've seen guys go off the rails like that, Jeremiah, and we've seen guys come back from it, but they almost never come back better than what they were before.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing. I mean, Leonard was able to come back and be pretty good as well, but it's tough. I mean, because we speculated, and I know others did as well, that maybe Tyson Fury just relishes in the underdog role, and, like beating Klitschko was the pinnacle of all achievement. I mean, Klitschko was the man. Right. I mean, even to this day, Wilder is not on Klitschko's level, so for me, beating Klitschko is still a greater achievement in the grand scheme of things than beating Deontay Wilder is. I can understand. I mean, it's like when you relish in that role and then you finally reach the peak of the mountain, you're looking at the top, you're looking at the beautiful sunset and everything else that comes with being king of, being heavyweight champion of the world, which used to be, the most revered title in all of sports. I mean, I can imagine that it's tough. And then, it just brings into a lot of questions when it came back. And we're like, oh, well, what you're always going to question, what does he have left? How much was he affected? And you never really know because,
right.
Like you said, I mean, especially when it comes to heavyweights, heavyweights, because there's weight fluctuations, you wonder. And even like Teddy Atlas, we talked about this on one of the daily shows last week, Teddy Atlas, because Fury came in at 273, Teddy Atlas was speculating, I don't like his psychology. This means he's not prepared for the fight. So even up until the rematch with Deontay Wilder, big-time people were still wondering if Tyson Fury was really that guy. And he proved out to be. I mean, it's a remarkable achievement, and I'm happy for the guy, frankly.
And I think one thing he also had on his side, Mike and Jeremiah, is youth. Tyson Fury, if I'm not mistaken, made his pro debut at 19. So this puts him still just into his, very early 30s, late 20s. And, he still had that youth on his side to come back. And, he looks older than his age. And I think people always – I remember when he was, 26, 27, people find it hard to believe that he was, that young. They thought he was already in his early to mid-30s.
I think it's when he shaved the head when he started to look old.
Yeah, I mean, but he just, he's just an older look about him. But, he's still a young man. When we think of that 28-year-old or that 29-year-old, we think of people like Canelo or things like that. But Tyson Fury's the same age. He's still a young man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's – yeah, sorry, I was going to say, I think he's younger than Billy Joe Saunders, his buddy.
He might be. He might be.
Billy Joe looks like he's 47 years old anyways now.
Yeah, he does look like it too.
All right, so we look at this. There's going to be a third fight. I see no way Wilder can beat him. There is no way Wilder can beat him. And I think a lot of that reason is this. Deontay Wilder, he's a bully. He runs his mouth. He talks about, killing people in the ring and all this crap. And I think the real advantage that Tyson Fury had over him, not just physically, was mentally, Thomas. And I think the fact that when Wilder started talking his crap and Fury was out talking him, I think that got to him a little bit.
Deontay Wilder, of all his past opponents, never fought such a confident opponent. And, going into this one, they were talking a knockout win. They weren't even saying, I'm going to beat you by decision. Tyson, I think he predicted a second-round knockout. That was his prediction, and he was pretty close to that because I think he put Wilder down in the third round, and then eventually the fight was stopped after another knockdown and then the corner throwing in the towel. But I think psychologically he did a number on Wilder, and if you go back even to the Klitschko fight, I think he did the same thing to Klitschko. I don't think Klitschko – that was not the real Klitschko in there that night. And there's no one better, I think, than getting and living inside someone's head like Tyson Fury.
Yeah, and I think Jeremiah, when people compare him to Muhammad Ali, He's not Muhammad Ali. Let's get that straight. But that right there and the ability to get in somebody's head is a huge thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the comparison has been on multiple levels because Fury is by and large viewed as a more traditional boxer, a guy who likes to be on his toes, stick behind the jab, et cetera, et cetera. Not a particularly big puncher. Yeah, and then on the level you're also talking about, he's also a great personality and a damn good talker. I mean, that's why. Besides all the other, peripheral things like the way they carry themselves, their fighting style, et cetera, I was rooting for Tyson Fury because of his personality. To me, he is bar none the most charismatic figure in the heavyweight division. Honestly, it's just not even close to me. I mean, Anthony Joshua, we've talked about on the show for years and years. He seems like a nice dude. He took his loss to Andrew Ruiz in stride. There were some excuses attached. Yeah. Sometimes the guys need them to make themselves feel better. He adjusted. He got a clear win. But Joshua, as we've talked about, he just seems a bit robotic in his personality. He feels a bit like a company man. Deontay Wilder to me, he's not an articulate guy. He said some unsavory things, and he talks about the race thing a lot. That's injected into it from time to time. But Fury just seems like a genuine guy. Everything is kind of off the cuff, and he's witty and funny, because of his accent. But his accent isn't as strong as some other guys you hear from the UK. That it's as an American, it's easy to digest, right? You don't have to listen in that closely to try and tease out some of the words. So he can go talk on Dan Patrick's show and some of these other shows and, do late night and stuff like that. And he's going to be a big hit because of it. I just felt like he would be the bigger crossover star, compared to Deontay Wilder, right? I didn't think Wilder was ever going to be a big hit in the UK or, Western Europe and any of those other places. Fury was the guy, and he's just fantastic at doing these sorts of things, talking shit, out-talking. He does it to everybody. I mean, he's just inside everybody's head, like Thomas said.
Yeah, and I really don't see a way that Wilder beats him in a third fight. I would rather see Joshua get the fight than Wilder. What do you think, Thomas?
Well, that's a fight that I'll tell you what would be a huge fight in the UK. Jesus. I mean, even if Wilder was to fight Fury in the UK, Tyson Fury is just he's on a different stratosphere now. But yeah, I think that fight, and I hope that fight will happen someday. I mean, that's the fight that most boxing fans, especially in the UK, were anticipating the most. It just hasn't happened. There's been some, promoter, they have different promoters, different network deals, things like that. But, I think they'll be able to make it work at some point down the road. And that's going to be a huge, huge fight.
Now, will that fight be
in
the UK,
absolutely.
or do you put it in Vegas? I'll ask both you guys' opinion because I think... Go ahead.
You got to put that one in the UK. Yeah, Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, my goodness, there might be 100,000 people at that fight.
Yeah, but I mean, that
would be huge.
It's going to make more money in Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you break down the revenue streams, but I think boxing fans, I think there's only one place for that fight, though, and that's where they're both from, and that's the UK.
That's where I would rather see it, too. I just think that it may end up over here just because, number one, if you have it in England, excuse me, it's that Corona again, but...
Oh, Jesus.
What? I was talking about the beer. Not. I took too big a drink.
Okay, gotcha.
Oh, you were talking about the other thing. All right. But I think you got a few things. Number one, you get the casinos can pay the rights fees. The other thing you got is Vegas. They've got a stadium now that can seat 80,000 people for the Raiders. But can you sell 80,000 seats there? Because you're going to have a lot of airplanes bring a lot of people from the UK over. Because I don't think Anthony Joshua is a huge sell. I think Tyson Fury is one of the biggest sells in boxing now, but I don't know if he could sell that himself. I think this. I compare it to Joshua Klitschko. Joshua Klitschko was such a big fight because of the atmosphere in the arena with 90,000 people there. And I kind of agree with you, but my other worry is if you want to make that money, if you're going to show that at the normal time you would show a main event in England, then that's going to put it like 3 or 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon here, and you're not going to get the pay-per-view sales at $80 a pop that you would at 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. But boy, it's just really tough to not see that fight on UK soil. But yeah, it would be interesting to see what decisions are made if and when that fight is put in place.
Now, I would like to see Wilder Fury on UK soil too, because when we talk about soil, Jeremiah, I think Wilder would soil himself just coming into the ring.
Well, maybe if the next costume is as heavy as the last one, maybe he might go number 2 in them or something. You know.
Yeah. That's the only reason he lost was the heavy costume, and then of course Tyson Fury cheated with his gloves, even though when people showed a video, it's from the first fight. But that's just why I don't like Deontay Wilder. His fans are all idiots too. Yeah,
and then it's Kenny Bayless was also biased against him, and what else was it? Mark Breland was influenced by Anthony or Andre Dirrell to throw in the towel. There's a laundry list of excuses. I don't know. Do you still pay attention to wrestling, Thomas?
A little bit. I'm not so much on the current product. I still like to, Google on YouTube, some stuff here and there, but not too much of the current product. But I know Tyson made an appearance there with WWE a few times recently.
Yeah. So my wife's father is big into that stuff, and sometimes we'll visit him on a Monday or something, and he'll be watching Raw or something. So I don't really pay attention to him, but I remember there was this guy Chris Jericho who had this long list.
Oh yeah.
Of and it's like it was almost like Santa Claus's naughty or nice list. It was really long, and if he didn't like you, he'd take you off. If he did like you, he'd put you on. I mean that had to mimic the excuse list for Deontay Wilder in this fight. I mean, it's become so dumb, especially the glove thing. I don't know if you've heard anything about that, but it's just terrible. It's awful.
Hey, remember the first fight when he claimed that he had a broken arm after the fight?
Yeah, none of the Instagram posts or anything back that up. This is why we haven't been fans of him. It's like whenever he doesn't perform to the level he expects, he has an excuse. And I don't know if it was that way when he had that 3-fight run against Spilka, Duhaupas, and Molina, where he was 228, 229 in all of those fights, and frankly he looked at his worst. But I don't remember. It doesn't matter. I would love to see that in the UK as well. I think that would be a slam dunk Tyson Fury. I mean, I think Fury's going to beat him regardless, but I think that'd be a slam dunk victory for Fury if they had it in UK, because not only does Wilder have to deal with the fans at the weigh-in screaming at him and booing at him and whatnot, but he'd have to deal with it his entire time there, all the way into the ring and throughout the fight. I mean, I think the third fight, it's Fury's all the way regardless. But I'd love to see it.
And I'll tell you this. I think a year or two from now, Fury Dubois is the fight that's even bigger than Joshua.
Wow. I think that could be an incredible fight right there down the road if that were to happen. And I'll tell you what, I've done every one of Daniel Dubois' fights since September of 2017, and he just keeps getting better and better every time out. I mean, his skills have really improved, and he has real power. So he could knock out anybody. And Daniel's only 21 years old, and he's 6'5". He's just so strong. And I know Frank Warren, his promoter, and the promoter I work for there in the UK, he just thinks the world of him and believes he can very well be the future of heavyweight boxing. And I'm really excited about April 11th. At London O2 Arena, live on BT Sport Box Office. Yours truly will be center ring, and as he takes on also a very good, undefeated, strong, punching heavyweight, former Olympian Joe Joyce. And that's going to be, I think, a really good test for Dubois, who will be fighting a man who's equal to larger than he is, and who had much more amateur experience than Dubois. And that's one of the things about Dubois is he did not have a lot of amateur fights compared to Joe Joyce. So even though their records might be at a similar standpoint now as professionals, Joe Joyce has more boxing experience. But Danny Dubois just looks more and more impressive, and he would be a really, really hard guy not to bet on. come April 11th.
Yeah, I like Dubois in 2 or 3 rounds in that, actually.
And a lot of people on the internet would agree with that. I've seen a lot of comments.
Don't say that, because most of the people on the internet that talk to me tell me I'm a racist because I don't like Deontay Wilder.
Oh, okay.
It's not true,
Man,
because my favorite fighter of all time is Muhammad Ali.
The greatest of all time.
Yes. So how could I be a racist?
I would never believe that, Mike.
I just don't like guys that run their mouths against and don't back it up, and then it really turns me off when I hear a boxer talk about killing somebody, because I've probably seen that 10 times in my life, including Dooku Kim, Ray Mancini, when I'm 14 years old on a Saturday afternoon, sitting there and watching Kim die in the ring, and things happen in boxing, but to say something like that, I don't think, even if it's for show, it's disgusting.
Yeah, well, and I think it's compounded by the fact that he said he would have, he's a warrior and he didn't want the towel thrown in. Listen, it's cool, you think you're playing by.
I think we lost Jeremiah, Thomas.
I was about to say, I don't hear him anymore. But, but like he was saying, though, Mike, I don't really think you need to go that far with it. Of course, we know Mike Tyson said a lot of things that he went too far with at certain times.
Yeah, but we knew he was a moron. I really think deep down, Deontay Wilder is not that bad of a guy.
No, I don't think so either. And, when the spotlight is put on you and you're trying to win the psychological game against your opponent, I could see how you could easily take that a little too far at times. And, a lot of adrenaline, a lot of testosterone going on. So I don't like to criticize too much on that, because I can kind of understand how you might go too far with it. But, yeah, it can be a little distasteful.
Yeah, I think it's a lot distasteful. Jeremiah, are you back yet? Oh, luckily, we're almost done, Thomas.
Yeah.
So, really, Data Dubois, kind of guy I like. He seems soft-spoken, but he carries a big stick.
He is. He's probably the most, and I've only seen just recently he started to show a little more personality, but he has just been a man of few words for the majority of his career thus far. And, but sometimes those are the most dangerous types of individuals. And when that bell rings, you can see that Daniel Dubois means business. And every punch, and Mike, I'm ringside. I'm literally, 6 feet away from the ring. And the punches he throws have such a thump. It's amazing. It's really a whole other game with Dubois. His power is just incredible. And I'm very interested to see how he's going to do against Joyce and how he's going to do, in his future fights after Joyce, because it's really hard to believe that he can't be world champion someday.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the thing that sticks out to me is World Boxing, or what was it, WBSS. I saw Joe Joyce fight Alexander Usyk, and it was a 5-round fight. Usyk had Joyce in trouble most of the fight. I think if it would have been an 8-round fight, he would have got knocked out. And Usyk, who I think is a heck of a fighter, and he's a guy that could possibly be in that mix to be the heavyweight champion someday, but he doesn't punch like Dubois.
No, he doesn't. And, don't disrespect Joe Joyce either. I've done a couple of his fights now, and I've been very impressed. Different style fighter. Sometimes when I see Joe Joyce, he looks like he punches a little slower, but the punches that he throws can be very damaging, and he has a very unique style, and he's a very big guy. Dubois is a big guy, but Joe Joyce is taller and, more bigger, I think, overall than even Dubois, which is hard to believe. And he's in great shape. I know he's been training, I believe, in Los Angeles. to prepare for this fight. So he's going to be in tip-top shape. Daniel Dubois is always in tip-top shape. So there's not going to be any worries in that department. And when that bell rings on Saturday, April 11th, everybody's going to be sitting at the edge of their seat.
Yeah, I will be, even though it'll be 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I actually like that, though, because I doze off when it gets later.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's pretty neat. Most of our shows are carried by ESPN Plus also, so the fans here who subscribe.
That one is, isn't it?
To that app. I'm not sure how that one works. I think it is. I think it should be. It is, of course, pay-per-view in the UK, which is the BT Sport box office outlet. That's the outlet for the pay-per-view there. But I think the fans and the responses I've gotten from the fans, they love it getting these fights from the UK because that leaves their evening open to watch the fights from here in the United States. So they get a little appetizer of boxing from the UK, and then they could have a nice little dinner with boxing from the United States in the evening.
Yeah, and there's no American football on right now, so there's nothing good to watch. Well, except for that XFL stuff. Yeah.
I was about to say, you can't forget about Vince McMahon's XFL.
I can forget a little bit, but I actually enjoy it. I think it's not too bad. It's a lot better than that Alliance thing they tried last year. All right, who's on the undercard? Do we know yet?
I do believe Sonny Edwards. He's a really good, young, up-and-coming fighter signed with Frank Warren. I think that's a name you need to look out for. I'm not too sure who else is on the undercard. I'm not sure if they've announced in detail of that. But Frank Warren has recently signed some really great young fighters, and it's going to be a great show overall from top to bottom. That's one of the things I love about the fights and working with the Frank Warren events is all the fights are good matchups, and you always know it's going to be a very entertaining night.
Yeah. Right now he's fighting TBA, so he'll win that one. I just looked it up.
Okay.
But you got anything else in between now and April the 14th or April the 11th? I'm sorry.
Yeah, yep, I do. As I mentioned just a little earlier, I am in Laredo, Texas, this Friday. Great night of boxing presented by AAA Promotions if you live out that way. Saturday, I head to Albuquerque, New Mexico, March 7th, and that's going to be at the Isleta Casino in Albuquerque. That's brought to you by Fresquez Productions. Lenny does a great job promoting there in the Albuquerque area. And then March 13th, I'll make my way to Hinckley, Minnesota for Showbox, The New Generation, of course, airing on the Showtime network. A few other things I'll be doing in late March before I head off to London for April 11th. So I got a busy March and looking forward to all these great fights that are planned.
I also would like to tell you that somebody from Hinckley, Minnesota just direct messaged a question or a comment. I'm sorry. He said that anytime you say Hinckley, Minnesota, you have to put the word beautiful before it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and
Nick.
gentlemen, live from beautiful Hinckley, Minnesota.
There
you go. From the beautiful Hinckley, Minnesota. I'm going to have to start, I like to memorize and I like to work on things so that, when the red light goes on, I'm on point, Mike. So I'm going to be working on that one until March 13th. And by the way, I will be also in Las Vegas April 24th, and that will be also for Showtime series Showbox, The New Generation. So just really excited to be continuing to work extensively in the UK. I'll also be in Scotland on May 2nd with Frank Warren, and that fight show was just announced recently. So super excited about continuing to work internationally and all throughout the United States, and loving what I do, man. Loving what I do.
All right, Thomas, you want to tell people where they can follow you on the old Twitter?
Absolutely. I'm at Thomas Treiber, and that's spelled Trei, B as in boy, E-R. Also on Facebook, Thomas Treiber, and on Instagram. So look me up.
All right, Thomas, we got to have you back on again before you go over to England.
Hey, Mike, always a pleasure. And too bad we lost Jeremiah. Well,
yeah, his computer froze, and he had to restart it. So,
all right. Well, it was great being on the show with you and Jeremiah, Mike. I really always appreciate you reaching out, and continued success. I'm a big fan of your shows, so continued success with everything you're doing.
All right. We're big fans of you, Thomas, and we look forward to April the 11th when you introduce Daniel Dubois and Joyce on a Frankie Warren production, which should be a hell of a fight.
You don't want to miss it.
I don't, so it better be on ESPN Plus, or you'll have to tell Frank he's got to fly me over there.
That's right.
You ought to just tell him that.
We'll work
anyways.
that out.
Okay.
I should. I'll email him in the morning.
Yeah, my wife will have to come too, so it'll have to be 2 tickets because I'm not allowed to leave the house without her because we live in Indiana and we don't get out much.
Well, I can't guarantee you a business flight, but, maybe we could work something out, like on a coach flight.
Well, just pick me up in a boat or something. It'll be all right. Pick me up tomorrow. Okay. We'll be there by April the 11th. All right, Thomas. Thanks a lot. We're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap it up. I want to remind you can hear all of our shows on iHeart, iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, YouTube. Over 300 different outlets carry the show now. So all you got to do is punch in The Grueling Truth on the old Google bar, and you'll find us. Me and Jeremiah will be back tomorrow night at 11 o'clock. You can follow me at Grueling Truth, announcing we are now on Rockfin, which is a subscription service. You have to pay $9.99 a month, but you'll get more than just our premium content, which we will have different legend shows, different shows on there that you won't be able to get on the website. But you also got guys like Jason Burmis, John Fitch. There's a ton of creators on there. So if you go on and you sign up through The Grueling Truth, you get everybody for $9.99 a month. So make sure you check out Rockfin. All right, guys, we are done for tonight. For Jeremiah Pricer, Thomas Treiber, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.